Here's how you can build a demon back that is super impressive. But first of all, let's just explain why the back is actually important from an aesthetic point of view. From a visual standpoint, it's actually the largest part of the upper body. If you build a significant amount of muscle mass on these muscle groups, this means that your overall upper body will be extremely huge. It consists of many muscles, however we'll just simplify things and classify them into two broad categories. The first one is the lats, which is a muscle by themselves. This is the wing-like muscle that you see. And the second one, we'll classify it as the upper back, which actually contains a few muscles such as the rhomboids, traps. The lats are responsible for giving you that broad, wide and aesthetic look, and it's often referred to as the wings. The upper back is then responsible for giving you that thick and dense look from the side. And that is why getting a demon back just makes your overall physique super impressive. It puts on slabs of muscle that just adds to your overall frame and is very important when you're trying to build an aesthetic physique. Now let's just introduce a few cues that you should take note of when you are training your back. The biggest common mistake that happens when people are trying to train their back is that oftentimes they're actually pulling with their arms instead of actually engaging more of their back. Of course, in back movements, you also involve your biceps to a certain degree. However, we want to minimize that and actually train our back, which is what we want. In order to actually fix this, you can think of your arms as hooks instead. Try and lead with your elbows and then pull with your pinkies. This will help you to reduce the amount of elbow flexion that is happening, which is actually why you engage your biceps more. Think about these two cues when you're training your back, and over time you'll get used to this motion. It takes some time to get used to, however, it does get better. Now let's just talk about the exercises that you can use to bias the lats, the first muscle that we have mentioned earlier. I use the term bias here because for every back exercise, you will be involving the other muscle groups to a certain extent as well. We can broadly categorize these into vertical pull, and the first exercise is actually a frontal plane kind of vertical pull. Frontal plane meaning that you're actually dividing your body into a front and back half. A common example that I'm sure you have already done before is the lat pull down or the pull up. The main cue that you want to think here is to actually keep your chest high and also try and lead with your elbows and drive your elbows down to your back pockets. This ensures that you're engaging your lats as much as possible. Another vertical pull that you can do is actually like an underhand pull down, neutral pull down or high roll kind of motion. This will be in a different plane. This will be in the sagittal plane. Sagittal plane meaning that it's actually dividing your body into left and right halves. It is slightly different from a frontal plane kind of vertical pull, however, it is still overall about the same. The cues will be the same as your frontal plane vertical pull. Another category of movements that you can do is actually a horizontal pull with your elbows tucked in. Common examples are a one-arm cable row, one-arm dumbbell row, and these are actually also in the sagittal plane. The cues are also the same. You want to keep your elbows tucked in and try and lead with your elbows and bring them to your back pockets. Now we can talk about the exercises that you can use to bias the upper back. You want to be doing horizontal pulls with your elbows flared out because for the upper back muscles, they work when your shoulder blades are actually protracting and retracting. What do I mean by this? Shoulder blade protraction is when you're actually bringing your shoulder blades forward, and shoulder blade retraction is when you're pinching your shoulder blades back. The exercise that you can do is a wide grip row variant. This can be with a chest supported row or just simply on a cable, and there are many kinds of wide grip rows that you can actually do. This will be in the transverse plane, meaning that you're actually cutting your body into top and bottom. The cues that you can think of here is to flare your elbows out first, and then as you bring the weight to the bottom, try and round your shoulders, meaning to protract your shoulder blades. And as you're trying to bring the weight up, think about leading with your elbows, and at the end, pinch your shoulder blades together, meaning retract your shoulder blades. Now I'll talk about a sample training split that you can follow in order to build your demon back. This will be a 2 times per week frequency. Why are we doing a 2 times per week frequency? Because studies have shown that this is optimal for muscle growth. The reason why we're doing a higher frequency instead of just training once per week is because this ensures that we are able to hit the muscles when they're fresh and good to go. Typically, muscles take about 24 to 48 hours to recover, so if we hit them again and provide a stimulus, this will be more optimal in maximizing the amount of muscle growth. The first session will be a lat focus session, and we will be doing the following exercises. First, we'll be doing a vertical pull in the frontal plane. You can think of doing a lat pull down or pull ups here. Then we choose an exercise where we will be doing a vertical pull with elbows tucked in, or you can also do a horizontal pull with your elbows tucked in. This will be in the sagittal plane, and a few examples of the exercises are shown here. And lastly, we will do a horizontal pull whereby we are training the upper back in the transverse plane, and you can do a wide grip row variant in this case. This is a lat focus session because we're doing the lat focused exercises at the beginning of the session and then followed by the upper back type of exercises. You can either choose a vertical pull in the frontal plane or a vertical pull / horizontal pull in the sagittal plane in this case, as they are pretty similar in nature. So if you don't have time, you don't have to do them both. However, if you want to do them both, that's also very fine. Then we move on to the second session, which is an upper back focus session. We are starting off with the horizontal pull with your elbows flared out in order to train the upper back. This will be in the transverse plane. You can do any kind of wide grip row variation in this movement. Secondly, we're moving on to a vertical pull in the frontal plane in order to train our lats. You can also choose to do a vertical pull or horizontal pull in the sagittal plane. I'm just choosing to do a frontal plane vertical pull in this case. And that's actually it. You don't have to actually do a lot of exercises for your back. Just choose one exercise in one plane of movement and train them twice a week, and you should be fine. If you're interested to know how you can actually mix these back exercises with the rest of the muscle groups that you train typically, such as your chest, arms, legs, shoulders, you can actually check out my 4-day upper lower split. It is available in the top right corner over here. I've actually made a detailed workout plan that breaks down how I actually organize these exercises together in a 4-day work split. If you're busy and short on time, you can also check out the 3-day version of it and the link in the description below. Both of them are actually free to download and you can check it out. When it comes to volume, I prefer that for each exercise we'll be doing about 2 to 3 sets max at a very high intensity. High intensity meaning it will be 0 to 2 reps in reserve. Why do I want to do this? This ensures that I'm actually making each set as effective as possible. Because we're doing a lower amount of sets, this ensures that we need to actually train these sets to a very high intensity to ensure that we get the highest quality possible. I also find that it's a very time-saving mechanism, and I just enjoy the higher intensity training style in general. Pushing close to failure actually provides a very optimal stimulus for muscle growth. It produces maximum mechanical tension on the target muscle, which then helps elicit the most muscle growth as possible. When you train close to failure, you'll observe that your reps start to involuntarily slow down as you approach failure. That is when the maximum mechanical tension is actually happening on the target muscle. High threshold units are being recruited in order to produce and generate that much force to actually lift the weight. So that is actually very optimal for muscle growth in general. A good sign of muscle growth and back growth in this case is when you're actually able to progressively overload over time. What is progressive overload? Progressive overload is when you can actually do more reps of a given weight or more weight for a given number of reps at a specific intensity, meaning reps in reserve or reps to failure, and for a given technique. Progressive overload is not when your technique becomes sloppier and then because of that you can get more reps or more weight. Progressive overload is when you maintain this same technique and almost every other condition, such as your exercise selection, exercise order. The ability to progressive overload is the result of the adaptations that have occurred due to the stimulus that we have provided on a target muscle. That is why now we are actually able to generate more force and thus be able to put more weight and also get more reps for a given weight. more likely than not, your muscle fibers have actually increased in sectional area. That results in it being able to generate more force and thus progressive overload. So progressive overload is a very good measure of muscle growth in this case. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and how you can actually build a demon back, and it doesn't have to be overly complex. Focus on movements in the 3 key planes of motions that I have mentioned earlier, which is a frontal plane movement, a sagittal plane movement, and a transverse plane movement. Do these back exercises on a twice a week frequency to maximize muscle growth. Also train at a high intensity, close to failure, in order to provide the most stimulus on your muscles, and also ensure that you're progressively overloading over time in order to see and also know for sure that you are actually building an insane back.